Racked ribbing is a great way to get some surface detail on the purl side of the fabric. In the SRP 50 manual, this is called Variation Swing. Instructions for it begin on page 31, and they have you starting in full needle rib, which would make a good hem, but sometimes I start just in stockinette like this. Here I've E-wrapped 30 needles, set the carriage for ordinary stockinette, knit across one time, hang a comb that I made myself that has enough weight to use with the ribber. Instructions for making it are in the Cool Tools and Cheap Tricks and More book, but you could also begin in waste yarn and hang your ribber comb and weights, then change to main yarn and do the exact same thing I'm doing. Now we bring up the ribber and set so it will knit normally, just as though knitting one by one ribbing. I have chosen a stitch size only one smaller than the main bed because the goal of this is surface embellishment, not pulling in, and I don't want the knitting to be overly tight. Since all of the needles on the main bed are in work and we're going to use some on the ribber as well, we must be at swing H so the needles can pass each other. And I like to start towards the center of the racking. For this sample, we will work with every 6th ribber needle in work and just with single needles in work, but you can do all sorts of things. It could be 2 or 3 needles in work. They could be at eccentric distances. They could be closer together or farther away. Here I knitted across one time to make sure that every ribber needle picked up a stitch. This is what I would do if I were starting the garment with a hung hem or no hem at all. If I had begun with a full needle rib hem, as suggested in the manual, we would have transferred all the excess ribber stitches to the main bed. In other words, all the stitches indicated by the pointing fingers, plus the ones left and right of them on either end, would have gone onto the main bed, and the net result would be the same. Only these would remain in work on the ribber. The main fabric would be the same. It's the hem that would be different. Down to the left, where you cannot see, I'm going to rack every 2 rows. First going left, knit 2 rows, left some more, knit 2 rows, and when I come near the edge of my main bed fabric, I'm starting back to the right. It is possible to rack every row, but it feels tighter and harder on the machine, and I like the zigzags that I achieve with every 2 rows just fine. You can also rack less often and get a wavy effect rather than a zigzag effect. After a couple of complete zigzags, I'll do a few straight vertical rows so you can see the effect of that. No racking while we do that. And then I'll do a smaller zigzag, going only 2 steps to the left, then back to the center, and 2 steps to the right, so that you can get an idea of the effect. If we rack only 2 times to the left and 2 times to the right, the amplitude of the zigs and the zags is smaller than if we rack 5 times. The whole time that we're knitting, your left hand is down here performing this action at whatever intervals you've decided on. Because of that, it's a great idea to make sure that the knitting is very smooth and adjusted so that knitting with your right hand while racking with your left hand is realistic. That's a matter of choosing the perfect stitch size and using a smooth yarn. Yarn weight should be in the middle to lower range of the size the machine will handle for stockinette, not the upper range. Let's move those ribber stitches so that we can pull up the swatch and have a peek. Here are the 4-step zigzags. 2 rows knitted, 1 click over, 2 rows knitted, 1 click over, and so. Vertical rows with no racking. And here are the 2-step zigzags. Starting in the center, I rack twice to the left, twice back to center, then twice more going the same direction to the right, then twice back to center. Here's the world's simplest sweater, a classic drop-shouldered crew neck. Unless you use quite a lot of ribber needles, the gauge of racked rib is very close to stockinette with the same yarn. That means that we could jazz up the very most basic pattern simply by adding a few ribber stitches, working racked rib, and assembling the garment with the purl side as the public side. You could do that on this sweater, which is the subject of a free video knit-along series. So if you have a ribber, you could follow that series using the ribber and add this technique. The video playlist covers one adult size. Basic sweaters of that sort are covered in infant to extra large adults in the Answer Ladies machine knitting notebooks. One is for standard and bulky, and one is for mid-gauge machines. Racked rib is a great way to jazz up a basic pattern so it's not boring, as well as a great way to get friendly with your ribber.